Alright guys, another order has showed up here. Let's get on in and see what's inside. Maxima MTL. Caster 927. Grease. Assembly lube. For the Vertex piston. All the dowel pins you could ever need. Pretty sure we only ordered 2, but... Stud. And we got a couple spark plugs here. And I don't know what the hell was up with all these dowel pins. So I'm going to check the order to make sure I didn't order that many. Alright guys, before I get to putting any of these seals in, I'm going to put these little retaining clips here onto this bearing right down here. Forgive any of the extra noise. It's basically a hurricane outside right now. Big storm coming through. So what you're going to want to do with these screws is you're going to want to put some Loctite on it. I got some blue Loctite in this old container. Still works though. Alright, now we can move on to doing some seals. Go ahead and lube up the seal here so it slides in. Don't want to damage it. Alright guys, let's get these dowel pins inserted. Got a little grease brush here. Old paintbrush. Alright guys, we're about ready to get these two halves back together. So I'm gonna heat up the inner race of this bearing here, make the crank slide on a little easier. Right on in, nice and easy. Alright guys, so I forgot to tell you, but I did put assembly lube in all of these 4 bearings. And before I forget, right now I'm going to put some in my connecting rod right here. That doesn't end up like the old one. Alright, so before I get this transmission in, I'm going to grease up the gasket sealing surface right here, then put the gasket on. Just want to grease it so in case we need to take it back apart that the gasket won't tear. So let's get after that. Alright guys, I'm going to grease up this gasket surface right here off camera, and then we'll be ready to put this transmission back in. Alright guys, let's get this transmission in. Got the gasket all greased up, so we get them to kind of mesh up like that. All the gears are kind of together. I'm going to slide around a little bit. Alright, that's in. Alright, time to get the shifting back into here. I'm going to start off with the main shaft. So the shift fork is going to go down into there, just like that. And for the other 2, on the counter shaft we have a right and a left. This one's right, this one's left. So the right is going to be at the bottom. And then the left is going to go right there. Alright, now we can get our shift drum in here. This side goes down. Just like that. And now these shafts can go in their spot. That. Right, just like that. And we can put our pins in. Right, like that. And our second pin is in this hole. And that's the shifting. No oil in the gears. Put some assembly lube in the gears, but when you shift, if you turn it, that's different gears. That's a gear. That's a gear. Alright, let's get these two cases back together. I'm gonna heat it up, this bearing, a little bit. Get the seals all greased up. So it's hopefully slides right on through. Looks like we're gonna need to pull it the rest of the way. Alright guys, unfortunately I did have to take the transmission back out, split the cases, because when we were putting it together, there's just one washer here. When I took it apart, I kind of didn't have it set up right. You can see I have it on 2 blocks of wood so that the transmission doesn't ever hit the bench. And when I was taking it apart, I didn't do that. So this bottom gear here kind of fell off. Right gear, so if we take it off here, the gear out, just like that. And there's this spacer, and that's where that washer belongs. It goes right there, and then it goes back on like that. So it was just a little mistake when I was checking it over on the diagram. I didn't happen to catch that. It's probably because I was checking it last and I just went right over it and missed it. But I think we're ready to get this transmission back in. Alright, just like that, transmission is reassembled once again. So just that little washer was enough to throw it off. And what would happen is it would be in neutral, or actually I think it was first, and you could pull the counter shaft slightly up, which you won't be able to now, but you could pull it slightly up, and that would basically disengage it, put it back in neutral. So I'm glad that you didn't miss that, and next time I'll just have to take a little bit more time taking it apart. So let's get this shifting assembly back into place here. Alright, it's the same process to reassemble the shifting. Just got to pull up on these gears, and you don't want to slide the shift forks into position. You got to make sure that they're in that groove. There's a little groove. I don't know if you guys can see. There's a little groove right there. I'll zoom into it. Right here, and the shift forks, you have to make sure that they get into it. So I'll put the bottom one in. You guys won't be able to see that. This one right here goes into that groove, and there's our shifting. Perfect. Transmission's back together, and I think we're ready to put the cases back together once again. Alright, let's see if this flywheel case will slide on. Line everything up. About where I got to last time. Alright, what I'm going to do right now is there's a couple spots that need something to keep them aligned, like a case bolt. So I'm going to put case bolt in those spots, just for now. Kind of start threading them in, and it'll just keep everything aligned as it comes down. Keep this gasket aligned. Let's get these case bolts back in. Just gonna tighten them down, the impact, get them sucked down. Alright guys, I'm gonna torque down the case bolts now. I'm gonna torque them down to 7 foot-pounds, but what I'm gonna do to start off is I'm gonna torque them down to 4 foot-pounds evenly all around and start getting this case to suck down. So when tightening engine bolts, you're going to want to go in kind of a star pattern. So I'm going to do this middle one. I'm going to go here. Just kind of start getting things tight. I didn't tighten them hard with the drill. And then I'm going to start torquing them. There we go. Alright, cases are all torqued down. Alright guys, let's get the rest of the shifting stuff together. So the first thing that we need to put on is this little tensioner for the shift drum. So that I'm just going to need this bolt, this washer, and this spring, which is right here. So to get this going, you're going to want to first have that spring on. And then this washer has to go on after the spring, so you're gonna want it to stay on this stud. You're gonna need grease to hold it on. And then we're gonna want to put some Loctite on this nut. We don't want it coming loose. And then to install it, you're gonna want to make sure that spring is down. We gotta slip this arm in. Like so. And then as we're getting close, gonna wiggle around this arm right here, because there's a little groove that we have to get it into on the back of this nut. So I got that in. And now we're gonna want to install this shift drum and this bolt right here. So how we're gonna do that is we're gonna put Loctite on it for sure. Put that Loctite on. And then you're gonna want to hold down this tensioner and get this bolt going at the same time. I'm gonna release needle nose pliers. Worked pretty good. It's not fully tight yet, but I'm gonna get it closer. Alright, it's all torqued. So this mechanism here basically makes it so you can go up and down. So basically how it's going to work is there's 2 sides to it, and if you can see in there's a hole, spring, and this little pin go into that hole. And then the setup is the same on the other side. And then we have these little keepers, and they can only go in on one side. And you'll know there's a little slot in them. Basically, if you have them in right, the slot's going to be towards the outside. So you can see right here it's installed correctly because that little pin pushes on that little notch. Alright, so to install this little part right here, it's got to be on just right. It's kind of an awkward part to install, but it's going to look something like this when you're done with it. It'll kind of hold itself if you keep pressure on it, just like that. So I'm going to put some assembly lube on it. Even though all this is going to be soaked in oil, to keep it all fresh, and then it'll penetrate some of those parts. So then I'm going to line it up to that bolt, and then you're going to have to compress those two little doors on there to get it in. It should look something like this once it's in. And then you're going to want to put some Loctite on these 3 bolts. And I'm going to drive these on in. It's a nut driver. I'm going to tighten these guys down real quick. I'm going to put this little collar on that assembly that we just did. Some assembly lube on it. Those first shifts are buttery smooth. I'm going to put some assembly lube on this shift shaft. And that is our final part of this. A little bit in the spring area, the parts that are going to be moving. And simply just slides right on through this hole. Should be a tight fit. And then everything should simply line up on this side. I pushed through that seal for the first time. Feels nice. So that is our final shifting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more assembly lube on all this. There's a lot of components in here. Keep them all nice and lubed up. Alright guys, let's get this kickstart assembly back together. So first we're going to have to install this little retainer. It retains the whole thing. I'm going to put some Loctite on that. And now we got to assemble the shaft here. So first thing that goes on it is, it looks like from this side we've got the washer here and the circlip. Put some assembly lube on it because there's not going to be any oil at this high part of the engine. And it looks like this guy's going to go on. So let's see if I can show this. There's 2 dots on it. One on the outer piece, one on the actual part, and you got to get those aligned. And then on this other side, looks like we have the gear, main gear. So obviously that's going to go spline side in, and it should lock with this other piece. And then after that, it looks like we have another washer. Put this washer on, and after that, this little piece. So this is going to slide on like so, and you're going to want to turn it until lined up with that hole, like that. This spring here is going to go on, and that little part right there is going to go into that hole and kind of locks it all together. So let me go see if I can find that end spring and we can get this installed. Alright, I found that last spring. So that guy's going to go on this side here, and you're just going to want to make sure that you got this first spline keeper here aligned with that center shaft. That's very important. And then I'm going to put some assembly lube all around in here. There's no oil up here, this part of the motor, and this is the first thing that you're going to use. And then what you're going to want to do is put that center shaft in. Might have to turn it a little bit. Right, there we go. It's in a position, and then you got to turn the spring till it aligns with this hole. That'll give it preload. Got to get it in there without ripping the gloves. Get everything kind of into its spot. So that's how it returns when you kick it. So that's all good right there. Now on the counter shaft with this little collar and then the idler gear. This is what transfers power from the kickstart to the clutch, and then the clutch to the crank. A little bit of assembly lube, and we can slide the idler gear right on in and put some assembly lube on this gear, but they spin together. Butter. Alright, I want to do a couple more things tonight before I finish up. So I want to put this collar here, right here. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on it. So it goes right on here, and then we got to push it past seal, right like that. And now that I got that on, I want to get this main gear that goes right here on. Let's do that. It's always a good idea to check for any sort of markings on this gear here, or the shaft, or really any gear and shaft, because that would indicate it has to go on a certain direction, but none of that here, so it can go on any way. Alright, so it'll slide on just like this. I'm going to put a nice amount of red Loctite on this, as this guy is going to do the most spinning out of pretty much everything else on this motor, because it's connected directly to the crankshaft. The only other thing that's going to spin more is the flywheel. Alright, this bolt here is torqued to 47 foot-pounds, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that with the setup I've got right now. So I'm going to need to get the clutch in next. It'll make it easier to torque this. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna do that tonight. So I'm gonna get it tightened down for sure, and then we'll have to torque it at a later date. Alright, got these wires cleaned up a little bit, so let's throw them on in. So how you're gonna wanna do this is kind of align this little rubber part at the same time as you line the whole thing. So for these bolts, I'm gonna put some Loctite, just blue, doesn't need to be super strong. And then I'm gonna try and get the timing as close to where it was when I took it off. There's a big mark that's been left by this bolt, and that's where I'm gonna line the top one up. The bottom one's just a circular hole, so you don't have to worry about timing on there, but you want timing to be pretty close. You know, before I get this in, I need to put that clutch. So this thing is a little bit beat up, but it'd still do fine. Nothing like the pull of that YZ426. That thing's got an intense clutch pull. No hydraulic clutches around these parts, kids. Alright, looks like I'm gonna have to fully take out this bolt. I'm glad I caught that before it got fully together. Alright, that's in like that. We can slide the coils back on. And let's put some new Loctite on here. Looks like some of it came off. Always does. Gets into the threads. So that'll be on there extra tight. There we go. Now this other bolt's the one that we're gonna try to get the timing good on. I'll put the Loctite on. Looks like it's gotten relatively close to where it wants to be. Needs to go a little bit this way. Like that. Looks really close. Alright, I'm gonna tighten these guys down now. Alright, I'm gonna clean up this flywheel. It's been out for a while. Just got a little bit of dust on it. Alright, I'm gonna put a little bit of assembly lube in the flywheel here. Make it slip on a little bit easier. Put some on the shaft too, especially that locating pin. Make it slip on. So again, I might need to do this. Might need to get a little bit more set up so I can fully tighten that guy down. So in here, all we got is a washer and this nut. I'm just gonna loosely thread it on now so I can lock it down later. Alright guys, today we're gonna get this clutch going here. So right here is the clutch. Now, I didn't take the bike apart to this point, so the clutch was already out when I got this motor, so I hope everything's here. Here's our clutch. It's in really good condition. I've already looked at the pressure plates in here, the friction plates and the steel plates, and they all look really good. So I'm just gonna leave it. Seems like someone's been in here and replaced the clutch not too long ago, so that's nice. Less work for me. I'll take it. Alright, so here's our pressure plate at the top, and it's still in really good condition. No damage to it at all. Still looks brand new. And here are actual friction plates, and I was looking at them. They've definitely been run, but most of that material is still there and looking good. So I'll run them and see how they are. If they're slipped at all, I can always get some new ones. But also, the seal plates under here look hardly worn at all. Pull one out and show you. You can see there's no heat, warpage at all. It still looks brand new. So, I'll give this clutch a try. Right, first and foremost, there's a couple pieces we have to get on. We got a collar here and a needle bearing. And these two are gonna slide on to the shaft right here. Right, we're gonna wanna put some assembly lube on this part for sure, because it's deep inside the clutch. Could be a little bit before it gets any oil after it's running. So first, gotta put this collar on. Now we can go on with the needle bearing. And the outer clutch basket goes on here. I'm gonna give it some lube. So this is what pretty much drives the engine with the kickstart. Makes the kickstart work, and it's the main part of the clutch. So now we can see all that kind of spins together. And now our outer can go on. So that's what turns the transmission. Alright, so after our inner, we're gonna have a washer and then this lock washer gonna go on right there. And then we're gonna have this nut, which I'm gonna Loctite, even though we have this lock washer on here, which should prevent it from coming loose. Anyway, I'm gonna put some Loctite on it too. We really don't want this coming loose, because it's the bridge between the crank and the main transmission shaft. So if it were to come off, then we could lose. Basically, would run, but you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. So I'm gonna tighten this guy down 59 foot-pounds. Alright guys, got it. So the best technique I've found to do this is you're going to want to have whatever you're using to hold it kind of over here. It's on this block of wood. And then I got the torque wrench here, kind of a little bit above it, and then you kind of squeeze it like this. You get a ton of leverage because you can get a lot of force out of the squeezing action of your hand. I think 120 pounds or something crazy like that. So when you're way out here at a foot, it's a lot easier to do that like that instead of trying to hold them opposite each other and make it work. That's just the easiest way I've found. So yeah, it looks like it lined up just about perfectly for these two tabs to bend over. Alright, so some channel locks, and you can squeeze those two over if I got enough room in here. Kind of just like that. Let's see if I can get a better way. Alright, just like that. No way that this nut will ever come loose unless these two come off. So now I'm going to put these clutch discs, friction plates, and steel discs back in. See if I can get them aligned here without having to separate them. Cleaned them all up. Yeah, it's not happening. So I'll do these one by one here. Got them all cleaned up now. Friction, steel. That's the way you're going to want to do it. Alternate. Just kind of slide them on. But I'll do a little time lapse here for you guys, so you don't have to watch this whole thing. Alright, last plate. That's all done and dusted. And what you're going to want to do, make sure, is you put the friction plate first and it should be last. That's how you know you got the right amount. So we got that all good right here. And I'm going to assemble or slide on the pressure plate next, but there's a couple more things we gotta get that pin that goes through and that little thing that pushes it out. So I'll get that next. Alright, here's those two parts I was talking about. This right here is the lifter rod, and this part right here is the lifter. It does have a little needle bearing in there, so I want to see if I can figure out. Kind of looks like it's hard to say. Kind of looks like it's like this. Because this part looks like it was protected. Looks like it was getting into some things at some point. So I'm going to give it some assembly lube and lube it up more as it's going in. It goes right down the middle here through the main transmission shaft. A little weird, but what it does. So it should go right on through. So let's put this actual lifter on. Gonna give it some assembly lube, some in the hole. And you're going to want to put some into the needle bearing here too. This is going to do a little bit of spinning. It goes on just like that. Kind of keeps itself in there, and that actuates right here on the pressure plate. So it pushes it out against the springs, which allows all the friction plates to spin freely. And this guy should slip right on. Now we have all of our springs. Alright, so Honda specifies the torque for these 6 bolts right here, 7 foot-pounds. I'm going to get them started by hand here. I'm kind of going to go in a X pattern. Just going to get them started. What I'd like to do, I don't unfortunately have a good cordless drill right now that I can trust, but I'd like to get a cordless drill. Normally I'd get a cordless drill and put it like one of the ones that you can set the torque setting on and basically just put it at 0. And then as you're tightening, you can get these all snug down pretty much to this point, and then from there you can finish with the torque wrench. You can go even farther than that. It just speeds up the process a little bit, but going by hand is a little bit more precise.